Okay, let me just hold on. Okay, there we are. Okay, so the first question, Krishna Kana just said that I can keep hers as a backup from last week. So let's start with, let's see, who is the first? First is Mahendra. He's asking, when Krishna leaves his cowherd friends with Balaram to meet Radha and the gopis, it is said that he is going with a small group of sadhakas. Considering the existence of infinite universes and with it an innumerable number of practicing sadhakas who aspire to this kind of bhav, and therefore even the smallest number of these practitioners who reach this goal is still a huge number of those sadhakas, Krishna manifests also an innumerable expansion of these pastimes happening at the same time to satisfy this immense demand of friends. Also, that last thing is a question. So does Krishna manifest also an innumerable amount of expansions of these pastimes happening at the same time to satisfy this immense demand of his friends? Could you talk a little bit about these wonderful pastimes?
Well, excuse me. Well, you refer to the midday pastimes in particular, which are a very central focus of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and something that I believe Gaudiya Vaishnavism has brought out of Krishna Lila that you won't find elsewhere. Others may have adopted or embraced that subsequently, but it is a kind of a unique contribution. Just changed it to the phone.
Oh, that's when it froze up?
No, before that. Now
Now
it seems to work. You can hear me? Raise your hand if you can hear me. Nick? Okay, hello. Nadi Krishna, just okay. Froze up for a minute. I was saying that the midday pastimes are a special contribution of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in many respects. And of course, they deal with the most secret affairs of the Braj Lila, the Parakiya love between Radha and Krishna, and which are hidden, which are typically thought to take place in the night. The night is like the day for the gopis, and the day is like the night for them, because in daylight, well, how can they express their love for Krishna in broad daylight? But in the midday lila, in midday, when the sun is the brightest, the name for the sun is also Mitra, which also means friend. So according to Radha's astrological chart, that she'll worship the sun god, Mitra, Surya. But he acts as a friend by participating in the midday lila in such a way that they can have union in broad daylight. It's very, very special. So, and of course, relative to your question, some of Krishna's friends, his Narmasakas, participate in that, those leelas. I've written about that. So in my forthcoming book, it's one of the longer chapters on the Nitya Lila, the apricot Lila. the midday section. And it's one of the longer chapters because it's this Leela, the midday Leela, is twice as long as any of the other Leelas, with the exception of the Nisha Leela, the nighttime Leela itself. So there's a correspondence in a way between the nighttime Leela, in which the Rasa Leela takes place, for example, and the midday Leela, their length, and the fact that there's a perfect, the Parakia is fully blossoming, blooming, bearing fruit therein in both. Yes, and Krishna's Narmasakas, they participate in that. I've written about that. So if you wait a little bit, get a copy of my book, then the way in which, the extent to which the Narmasakas are involved will become clear. But it is clear in a broad sense that those Leelas can't take part, can't happen. That union of Radha and Krishna really can't happen without their help, which is offered in a form of what Rupa Goswami refers to as Sakhi Bhav. So Narmasakas, of course, as I've mentioned at other times, are a unique contribution of Rupa Goswami in the Indian aesthetics, drama, the arts, and so forth, poetry. There are 4 types of male assistants to the hero of the drama, a romantic drama, and all of them are included in Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasa, but he adds a 5th, the Narmasaka. So it's a unique contribution of his and a penetration into the nature of that Leela from the vantage point that we are given the opportunity to access through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dispensation. So now with regard to the particular of your question, yes, you have to be careful. I heard someone I was listening to some young ISKCON devotees giving a Bhagavatam class at a place called the Bhakti Center. It's in New York. And I made a couple comments on a couple of them, offered some suggestions and so forth. But one lady was giving a class and she was talking about the Leela in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu assumed the form of Varaha before Murari Gupta. And the gist and the essence and the entire focus of her class was that we have to really literally believe that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the form of a boar. It can't be taken metaphorically or allegorically. And this is her conviction, and she was very nice about it, and she was very sincere about it, but she kept emphasizing you have to take it literally, have to take it literally, have to take it literally. I commented that often there's a middle road here to your intelligence, if you will, which says, how can Chaitanya Mahaprabhu suddenly turn into a boar? That's the form of God and so forth. These are, in one sense, the allegorical section of Leela, described in the Puranas, and so on and so forth. So there's a middle road, anyway, a way to look at this, which can pacify your intellect without interfering with your heart. And when I say allegorical Leelas, I don't mean they're not real, but they represent a certain bhava of Narayan. So in Vaikuntha, he has all these bhavas, and so the Puranas are talking about them. With regard to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this instance, I said there's a type of darshan which is most common, which is called antardarshan. So like the deities have spoken to me in the presence of others, but nobody heard them but me. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat on the Vishnu's throne in Srivas Thakur's home and showed his form to different devotees in different rasas and even from different leelas. And when he showed when he showed himself as Ram to Hanuman, nobody else saw that. When he showed himself in another way to another devotee, only those devotees saw that. So this is called Antardarshan. It's not any less real. It's happening. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed the bhava of the boar and gave, if you will, Murari Gupta eyes to see that. But it's the good argument, of course, is that if someone else was standing there, they might not have seen the same thing unless Chaitanya Mahaprabhu allowed him to see. You know the famous story from Mahabharata, where Krishna came to Hastinapura and something happened. I forget the details, but he showed a wonderful form, like a Virata Rupa, a universal form, everything inside of him. In the assembly, and everyone was stunned, and Dhritarashtra, was blind, was saying, "Oh, Krishna, just for 1 minute, give me eyes so that I can see this form." And Krishna said, "Without eyes, you can see. I say see, and you can see." And he could see, and he didn't have any eyes. So we have to be careful. My point here is, when we talk about the Leelas, what I said in my comment was, I wouldn't use the word literal. I would say the Leelas that are being described are more than literal, because they don't fit entirely within the word or thought. They transcend word and thought. That doesn't mean word and thought about them by those who have experienced them are not powerful and something that we should take very, very seriously and so forth. We should. But still, they have their limitations. How can you express in word or in thought, philosophy, all that is the experience that transcends mind, word, and so on and so forth? So the Leelas are talked about in a certain way, then we will have a tendency to take them too literally, and then ask questions like this. Well, if only Krishna only goes with a couple of narmasakas, what about other narmasakas? There's millions of them. There's billions of them. There's an infinite number of them, actually. And do they not get to go? Or how does that work? What's the math of that? And so on and so forth. So this is the part of my answer. You have to take these Leela explanations to be more, I'm going to say, more than literal. With the Achintya Beta metaphysic, we know, philosophically speaking, there must be Leela. There must be interaction between the Jiva and Bhagavan that we call love. And we know that our acharyas have experienced that, and they try to talk about it. And that those talks are powerful in and of themselves, but still the experience transcends even the limits of the ability of an empowered devotee to talk about them. And we find different devotees talking about the same Leela differently. One can explain, well, one yuga was done one way and one yuga was done another way. Or you could say, well, it was shown to one devotee one way and shown differently to another devotee. Or one devotee caught it a detail that another didn't, and so on and so forth. So we had to be a little careful about that. I've given an example before. One disciple of Prabhupada said that he'd taken measurements of Vrindavan and realized that within what's described as the Braj Mandal and its geographic representation on Earth, that Nanda Maharaj had 900,000 cows and they wouldn't fit 900,000 cows. That was his calculation. I don't even know if that was accurate, but he knew, he reported to Prabhupada like, problem, there's not enough room for 900 cows here. And Prabhupada said, you read too much. That's his whole answer. You read too much. You're reading too much and you're taking it too literally. As much as Prabhupada was a strong advocate of not taking it metaphorically and allegorically at the cost of the reality of the form of Bhagavan, the Leela of Bhagavan and its eternality and so forth. At the same time, here's an instance in which he said, well, you read too much. You're trying to enter into it with the limits of logic, right? Logic has its place, but it's far beneath the Atma, to speak of Paramatma and Bhagwan. So, with regard to the Leela, when it's said, oh, Krishna goes with a couple of Narmasakas, it means he takes this bhava with him. This bhava goes with him. So if you have that bhava, then you go with him. And your experience may be, here I am with Subal and Madhu Mangal, or any number of others, or you have to go there, find out, but all that bhava is accommodated there. That bhava has a role there. That bhava is essential for that Leela to play out in the way that it's intended by Leela Shakti, for Radha and Krishna to meet in the midday. These Narmasakas, that bhava has a role, so it must be there. But again, the Leela descriptions, the narratives, they're poetic, they have a limitation to them, and even as they are empowered and so forth. But it's a beautiful Leela, and as I say, when you can read about it in hopefully in the near future with the publishing of my book. What else? Any follow up on that?
Hare Krishna, pranams Guru Maharaj, pranams all devotees. I have a question. I have in his Saranagati, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, the ways of Saranagati are humility, dedication of the self, acceptance of the Lord as one's only maintainer, faith that Krishna is surely protect, execution of only those acts for able to pure devotions, and renunciation of conduct adverse to pure devotion. Guru Maharaj, could you say something more about this, about Sharanagati, about these ways? Something more.
Well, I gave a series of lectures recently in the United States, back in October, I believe it was, in North Carolina, where we have a community of devotees. And the focus of the entire series of lectures, which were related to Govardhan Leela, the focus was on Sharanagati, which this Leela teaches us about in a broad sense, because in the broad sense, Sharanagati means, as we know from the Gita, Sarvadharman Parityaja, Mam Ekam, Sharanam Braja, give up worship of the gods that is central to Varnashram for fulfilling the various desires that one has in the world, and take shelter Krishna, Mameka, me alone, one God, Krishna. So this is the more basic idea of Sharanagati. And obviously, if you're giving up the worship of the gods who fulfill many different desires to worship Krishna only, well, the implication is you're giving up the other desires to seeing the uselessness of them in terms of your actual pursuit, which is eternal happiness. They won't provide that. Krishna will, and so forth. And just the verse in the Gita also says, and just giving up the worship of the gods and those desires, that isn't sufficient in itself. Take shelter of me, that is Sharanagati. Sarvadharman Parityaja. Parityaja means giving up, just giving up You have to give up material things, and you have to give up just giving up material things, and accept shelter of Krishna and service to him. It's something positive in the context of which the giving up is accomplished as well and more comprehensively. So that's the basic idea of Sharanagati. But in our Paribar from Bhakti Vinod, he has taken this one limb that, as described by Rupa Goswami of sadhana bhakti, Sharanagati, and made it a central focus of our Paribar. It's a concept that is found and is prominent in the Ramanuja Sampradaya. For those who don't have adhikar for karma or gyan, which in that Sampradaya are prerequisites for bhakti. They emphasize the post-liberated status of bhakti. And the generosity, on the other hand, of bhakti is only emphasized in terms of sharanagati. So if you have adhikar for karma and gyan, then you go through karma and gyan and come to bhakti. As you qualify yourself, because bhakti is such a high thing. So it involves meditation on Bhagavan. In order to meditate, well, you have to pass through karma, desires, you have to pass through gyan, and have the capacity to meditate and so forth, the pure heart. That's their idea. But what about the people that can't do that? So the other emphasis within Ramanuja Sampradaya in terms of how to attain mukti is sharanagati. Just do sharanagati. Anyone can do sharanagati. And so this, in effect, is the emphasis on the generosity of bhakti. Now we put the two together. Post-liberated status of bhakti, its height and its breadth, if you will, or its depth and its breadth of generous in the form of Mahaprabhu, who is Radha and Krishna combined. There's their depth, and Yuga Avatar. There's the breadth as well, generous. And he's generous, although acting as the Yuga Avatar, he's giving Rag Bhakti. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur has taken that anga of Sharanagati and made it a central focus of our Paribar appropriately so. And there are 6, and you just read them, aspects or limbs of Sharanagati. The central focus of Sharanagati, its Sarup Lakshan, is Goputve Varanam Tata, accepting Krishna as my maintainer. That's what the people of Braj did. They were thinking our maintenance is dependent upon Indra because he provides rain, and we're cowherd people and we need rain in order to have grasses to feed the cows. Krishna said, no, you take shelter of me. I will maintain you. The hill is maintaining you. And then he showed himself to be the hill, of course. So this is the central Sarup Lakshan. And then the Tatastha Lakshan are the other limbs. Some also say that Rakshik Kshatri Vishvasva, Krishna is my protector. This is also central. So you can say the two are the Sarup Lakshan, and the others are Tatastha Lakshan, marginal characteristics of Sharanagati. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur has written a whole songbook entitled Sharanagati, which he has songs that pertain to the different limbs, the 6 limbs of Sharanagati. So those songs can be studied, they can be learned, sung, meditated upon. And in the culture of Sharanagati, which Bhakti Vinod Thakur rightfully and insightfully has described as the outer expression of that which is give us adhikar or eligibility for bhakti to begin with, Shraddha. So Shraddha, properly understood, is not just faith in the scriptural argument, but the application of that faith that has been well reasoned in the scriptural argument. In other words, doing something It's hard enough to know what to do, but it's harder to do what you're supposed to do. Mostly we don't know what to do, and then you may know what to do, but then you don't do it. So you have to be careful in bhakti not to know what to do and think that that is the same as doing it. It's not. It's only as useful knowing what to do as you do it. So faith, properly understood even in the Latin credo, I think it is, belief, faith, is active. It's not sitting on the fence. It's actually doing something. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj described faith as as the Gita does, the animating principle in life. If you have faith that an airplane is going to go from Warsaw to San Francisco, then you're going to buy a ticket in advance, and you're not going to worry, and you're going to go and show up at the airport at the right time because you believe that it's going to go there. If you didn't have doubt that it was going to go there, you might not buy the ticket, and you certainly wouldn't go to the airport. So faith is the animating principle in anything. The beautiful thing about bhakti, as explained by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates, is that while faith is required for any endeavor, so to speak, to being the animating principle in life, in bhakti, it's all you need is faith. Whereas in Gyan or yoga, for example, you need faith in the efficacy of these practices, but you need other qualifications also. For yoga and Gyan, you have to be celibate, for example. There's an anga of yoga, right? No, but not for bhakti. No faith alone, because of the power of bhakti, given that it's governed by the nirguna, whereas yoga, Gyan, for example, they're governed by sattva guna, karma marga is governed by rajaguna. So their efficacy is weak, and their power is weak in terms of affording us experience of transcendence. Bhakti is powerful. It's coming from that side. So all you need is faith in it. But faith in it means that it means sharanagati. So the measure of one's faith will be determined by the sharanagati. Now you can say, I have faith, but how do we see faith? Where will we see it? So this is how to see faith. You say, I have faith in Krishna. We say, well, okay, how do I know that? How can I see that? We look and see, are you accepting the things that are favorable for Krishna's service? Are you rejecting the things that are unfavorable? What if it's pleasing to you? That means to your senses or to your mind, but it's not pleasing to Krishna. It's not favorable for bhakti. Will you give it up? Well, if you do, then we can say, oh, he's got some, we can see his faith, right? If you don't give it up, we can see, oh, faith is weak. Maybe some faith, but it's weak. You have to understand those things that we like that are not favorable for bhakti are the things that are fostering the identity that we have that's false, that's the whole source of our whole problem, all of our problems. We're looking for something that can't be found in the identity that's derived from the mind and senses in relation to sense objects. You can't find eternal happiness in relation to things that don't last, don't endure, that are temporary. And you want eternal happiness. Everyone wants to live forever and they want to be perfectly happy. Right? Everyone wants that. So these are very simple instructions, but they're very hard to follow. You don't need a real complicated theological explanation. It's a very simple explanation, but very difficult to follow. Bhakti is simple. It's simple to do also. It's simple. You just give that up. There's a story about a disciple who was initiated by his guru, and then the guru went traveling. And in the guru's absence, he became a little restless, and one thing led to another. And he thought, if I only had, I think he was hanging his copans on a tree, and some mice were eating the copans. So somebody said, well, why don't you get a cat? So he got a cat. And then the cat was meowing and making noise during his meditation. So he said, what to do? And somebody said, well, why don't you get a dog? So he got a dog. And then the one thing led to another, he got a wife. And then well, she talks too much, have a child. So he got a child. And then he was distracted from his practice. And years later, the guru came back. And he said, oh, I can't go with you, Gurudev, now. I have all these responsibilities. And Gurudev said, okay, well, he said, I'm going to go bathe in a river, and afterwards I'll, come and take my meal. So he went to bathe in the river, and then the disciple heard, help, help, help. The Guru was chanting, help, calling help. So the disciple ran to the shore and said, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he was holding on to a log in the river. And he said, the log is holding me here. I can't get out. And the disciple said, well, just let go. Just let go. No, it's holding me. It's holding me. He said, no, just let go. Just let go. So then he let go, of course, and the disciple realized, those things are not holding you. You're holding those things. They're not holding you. You're holding them. And you can let them go. It's in your hands. And you have the reason to do so. And with the philosophy of bhakti and saranagati here, as we're emphasizing, you have reason to do so, good reason. And prospect, what will be the result? You could see that standing in the form of your guru. So there's so much impetus. So it's easy. It's easy to do. It's easy to do theoretically, but it's hard to do practically, because we've been going in a different direction forever. Now this current of bhakti coming to us through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and our Bhakti Vinod Paribars is that's up where you have to avail yourself to that current, make yourself accessible, make that current accessible to you through sadhu sangha, which isn't just to pat you on the back, but it's to tell you, okay, that's not helping you, that's not favorable to your bhakti, you should give that up. Now you have to do it in a practical way. You have to be skillful in your sadhana. You have to know that I should be giving this up, but I'm not. But it's my goal. And if you can't go in the front door, well, maybe you can go in through the back door. If you can't go in the back door, maybe you can go through the window. If you can't go through the window, maybe you can go through the chimney, but get in that house. Get in there somehow or other. So sadhana means to be skillful. You can run into the brick wall of your conditioning. So then instead of just trying to butt your head against that wall and break your head open and become neurotic, you could think, well, maybe let me back up a little bit. I'll get a little strength and I'll run forward or something, or maybe I'll jump over the wall, or I'll try to go around the wall. So there's a way to work with the mind and with one's conditioning in connection with sadhana, that makes our sadhana skillful. It's a skill. Sadhana is a skill in one sense, right? It's not a haphazard thing. So if you want to be good at anything, well, you have to practice. You have to use your intelligence and so on and so forth. But this should be, the saranagati should be something that we realize as sadhakas in the stage of sadhana bhakti, that we're cultivating that. And here it's brought out beautifully, 6 angas. So you start with this, Krishna's my maintainer, Krishna's my protector. So we call out to him, not to anyone else. Say Krishna's my maintainer. Well, that doesn't mean, okay, Krishna's my maintainer, I'm just going to sit here and Krishna's going to come and feed me. Yeah, he might, if you were Madhav Tripurari, if you had that kind of bodyguard, but you don't. So therefore we have to invoke the Christian saying, God helps him who helps himself. You want Krishna to maintain you? Well, okay, how will you do that? By maintaining Krishna. What? That's right. You have the deity of Krishna and you maintain him. I'm going to work for him. He's part of my family. He's the center of my house. He's the living room. The living room is the temple, where it brings the house to life. I'm going to get work, and I've got a wife, I've got a husband, as it may be the case. I've got children. They're all part of the temple here, and I'm going to feed them and feed the deity. So this is a practical way, how you can accept Krishna as your maintainer. Or you can think, my Gurudev has a mission. He's working, serving for the spreading of Krishna consciousness and creating facilities through books and other things, travel, that I may become more Krishna conscious, giving me more Sangha to take help from, and so on and so forth. So that we maintain my Guru. I mean, the Guru doesn't need you to maintain him, but you need to maintain the Guru, right? Sometimes people say, well, God doesn't need anything. Why are you spending all this money to build a temple? God doesn't need anything. No, God doesn't need anything. In one sense, that's true. But you need something. What do you need? You need to know God. God's everywhere. Why only the temple? Well, if God's everywhere, you're sure not acting like it. But in the temple, you act like God's there. So you practice. Let's put one place where we put God there. We put him on the altar. Then you go and you act a certain way there. And then if you do that properly, in time, you'll realize the universality of the deity, and you will act like you act in the temple everywhere. You can say God's everywhere, but you don't see God everywhere. So we're going to put him in a temple so you can't miss him. You have to see him there, and then act in a certain way. So similarly, God doesn't need anything. That's true, but you need to understand that God's the maintainer. So how you do that? Well, go to work. Well, what do you mean go to work? God's supposed to maintain me. No, you go to work and maintain God. And yourself in the context of being a servant of the servant of God. That's how you maintain yourself. I'm maintaining myself because I'm a servant of this servant of Bhagwan. And I don't need much, but something. So that I have energy to serve and so forth. So this is how you do saranagati with regard to its sarup lakshan. Maintain Krishna, maintain the mission, especially as a householder. You're a householder, so I speak to you this way. So this is so again, as if saranagati is the external manifestation and expression of the faith, then we can measure our faith in relation to these 6 angas and see how we're growing in relation to them. Very important, very good question to ask about that. Thank you. Does that help? Jai.
Yes, Guru Maharaj, thank you very much.
Yakshamash.
I'm okay.
Okay. Good.
There's a follow-up question on the first question about the Priyanama Sakas from Krishna Sevaka Das, who's a disciple of Turiya Das Mahashai, your god brother. Krishna Sevaka is asking, can you tell a story or explain about Balaram and his group of sakas, how they are and what they do in Krishna's lila with Radha, and any other lilas that are distinct from other friends?
Turiya Das Mahashai ki jai. Well, Balaram's friends are Krishna's friends also. But while Krishna and Balaram are one in tattva, they're both Bhagwan. If you worship Krishna, Balaram is worshipped. Of course, we worship Krishna and Balaram, but Balaram is an aspect of Krishna. So they're one in tattva, but emotionally they're different. So there's an emotional aspect of Krishna that is tendered to, catered to, that is brought to the attention of some of his friends. And they are attracted to that. They're attracted to the fact that their friend, Krishna, has an emotional, romantic life that is very powerful and compelling, and even takes him out of Sakya Bhav into Madhurya Bhav. Now, this is not the same with Balaram. Yeah, Balaram has some gopis and so forth, but I've explained in my book that it does not have the draw on him that Madhurya Rasa has on Krishna. Balaram's primary focus is being the friend of Krishna. Yeah, there's some gopis that like him too, and he marries them. That is Maryada. It's not Rag. It's an aspect of him, but it's not. It doesn't affect him in the way that Krishna's affected. Balaram's focus is, I'm Krishna's friend. So some of the friends, there are 4 different types of friends of Krishna and Balaram. Some of them, the Narmasakas, they are attracted to Madhurya Rasa as it appears in Krishna. In other words, they're attracted to the fact that their friend has this side of himself that's very prominent, and therefore they want to participate in his romantic life. They don't want to have a romantic relationship with him, but they want to participate in the romantic life that he has with Radha, and assist him in that. So when he feels separation, they may help him, and they may help bring about the union between Radha and Krishna. They may give their life for that, risking. Subal risked his life for that in midday, to bring about the union of Radha and Krishna. Whereas the other 3 types of friends of Krishna don't have that same attraction. It's possible for someone to be in a primary rasa and have attraction for another primary rasa, as it appears in another devotee, as it appears in Krishna, in different ways. As I say, within Sakya rasa, when Madhurya rasa appears in Krishna, then these Narmasakas, they're attracted to that. And so they are attracted to Radha in this regard, and Krishna, and the idea of bringing them together. But the other friends of Krishna, the Sakas, the Suhrit Sakas, the Priya Sakas, they are not, they don't find that same attraction. So in relative to the previous question that yours follow-up arises out of, in midday when Krishna and Balaram go, when Krishna goes with the Narmasakas to Radha Kund on the pretext of something else, and a few friends go with them, and secretly they're meeting with the gopis, Krishna's meeting with the gopis with the help of his friends, then the rest of the boys, they stay with Balaram. That's why in Bhagavatam, in the 15th chapter of the 10th canto, when the Poganda Lila begins, Poganda Lila means the boyhood. This is when Sakya Rasa fully starts to blossom, right? Not in the Kumar Lila, but Sali Rasa is more prominent in the Kumar Lila, right? But in the Poganda Lila, the boyhood, the Sakya Rasa is fully blossoming now. And at the opening of that chapter, Krishna gives a lengthy eulogy of Balaram, praising Balaram. There are different reasons for this, but one of the reasons is that he's about to take off with his friends, his Narmasakas, to meet with the gopis. That's the idea. So he's giving this eulogy of Balaram, and all the balance of other cowherds are going to stay with Balaram. So while Balaram is the servant of Krishna, the friend of Krishna, he's also Bhagwan. In the absence of Krishna, those friends are now focusing on Balaram more as Bhagwan than in terms of more as the worshipful than as the ideal of worship. He's the ideal of worship because he's the perfect friend of Krishna. But he's also the object of worship in Sakya-rasa. So in the absence of Krishna at this time, the fact that he's the worshipable object of Sakya-rasa, as is Krishna as well, will take precedence. And so Balaram will go different places in Braj with the boys and so forth, and it will appear to them so preoccupied with Balaram, having been compelled, as the Bhagavatam is showing, through the eulogy of Balaram on the part of Krishna, to take shelter of him, that the fact that Krishna's been gone for hours, they lose sight of that. And suddenly he appears back and they think it's only been a short time, but then they see, actually the sun is way over there. He's been gone for a long time. And then suddenly it all comes to light. Where have you been? Where were you? Yeah. And then, of course, he gives different explanations that satisfy some, don't satisfy others, and so on and so forth. So, written about this at great length in my book also. So when that comes out, I suggest you get a copy. I hope that really addresses your comment. If not, certainly ask more.
Okay, next question is from Kishore Krishna from Madhuban.
Pranam Gurumaj. I
don't hear any of those crickets.
yeah, they started up. They're not so bad this year, so far at least, but we'll see. I read on Facebook someone posted that when Nityananda Prabhu came to Navadvipa, he introduced Lord Chaitanya to the path of Radha-bhava. And I've heard that, sadhakas go through Nityananda to enter into the leelas of Radha and Krishna, but I've never really heard that described in relation to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I was just wondering what you thought about that.
What did they say? I never heard that. I never heard that either. What was the evidence supporting that?
It wasn't, it looked like it was referenced somewhere, but it wasn't clear where. It basically delineated like different teachers of Lord Chaitanya and Gangadas Pandit, Advaita Acharya, Ishwar Puri, and then Nityananda kind of being the progression into Radha-bhava.
Send me a copy, I'll look it over. I know that Vrindavan Das Thakur in his Chaitanya Bhagavat says that Nityananda Prabhu brought Gopi Bhav to the world. Of course, what he means there is that he gave the world to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by putting all the focus on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is in pursuit of Gopi Bhav. But more typically, it's thought that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu learned about Gopi Bhav from Gadadhar Pandit, and later from Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami identifies Ramananda Roy with Subal in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Swarup Damodar with Lalita Saki, a little different than you find in Kavi Karnapur's Gauraganadesh Deepika. They're assisting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in stepping into the bhav of Radha. And of course, Gadadhar Pandit is the Radha of Gaur Leela. So Nityananda Prabhu is not typically looked at in that light. So that's why I ask for some evidence. There's a tendency in different groups and paribars to make an emphasis on how their particular leader of their paribar is And that may be okay, and it may not be. It may be, you can glorify great devotees unlimitedly, but at the same time, if you glorify them for things that they didn't actually do, then it becomes unbecoming, right? So, like I said, I'd like to see. I haven't found evidence for that in any of the core texts ever. And the meeting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was described in Chaitanya Bhagavat with Nityananda, and with also Chaitanya Charitamrita and other texts and so forth. But the fact that, and I've emphasized this, that Balaram does not directly participate typically in the Madhurya Leela of Krishna's rendezvous with the gopis, other than when he was sent by Krishna to minister to the inhabitants of Braj and the gopis and deliver them a message. At that time he did, but it's very particular how he did that. There he expressed his reverence for their bhava. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then Chaitanya Charitamrita describes when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing in the Rath Yatra in the form of Jagannath was seeing him as Radha. Nityananda Prabhu had the same vision and bowed down at a distance, paying obeisances. Although, as I say, Balaram doesn't directly participate in the romantic affairs of Radha and Krishna. In Gaur Leela, he directly participates by glorifying that and widely advocating worship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advocated the worship of Krishna. Nityananda Prabhu said, so much for that. We worship you, worship Gaur, right? So putting an emphasis on him in that way and bringing to light his divinity prior to any books being written about him or anything like that. In this sense, Nityananda Prabhu, Balaram, Nityananda Ram is taking great joy in being able to directly participate in the Madhurya Leela of Krishna in the form of Gaur Krishna, in Gaur Leela, directly participate in it, in the sharing of it, widely speaking about it, glorifying. His lips are sealed in the Krishna Leela about that. He's very honest, Balaram, not like Krishna. So when Mother Yasoda asked him that, did Krishna eat dirt? He said, yep, he ate dirt. And Krishna was very upset with him. How could you do that? How could you say that to her? It was the truth. But it's not that Balaram doesn't know that he's rendezvousing with the gopis, but he doesn't talk about that. He may be truthful, but he's not saying anything about that. I don't know anything about that. So, but in Gaur Leela now he gets to speak about that. So it's a great opportunity for him. But this is the way that he participates. Now, some people like to say, well, he's an Angamanjari, therefore he participates. Well, that's a whole other, they've written a whole article about that. And the basic gist of that is that, well, yes, if you see Radha's sister Ananga as a Shakti expansion of Balaram, that doesn't mean that she's Balaram, has the same ego as Balaram, the same. So she has her own ego. Balaram himself, as the person, he's not participating in the Madhurya Ras. Anyway, that is a whole other discussion. I've given a very long, comprehensive article about that. That's also part of my book. I mean, the Goswamis have never identified Ananga as the expansion of Balaram, but in our Bhakti Vinod Paribar, we do, and that comes from the Bhakti Vinod Paribar, prior to Bhakti Vinod. The Bhakti Vinod Goswami line that he was initiated in, it comes from there. And we accept that idea that Ananga Manjari is a Shakti tattva of Balarama, but he's not in a romantic relationship with her like Krishna is in with Radha. If Krishna was completely he's one with Radha, but he's different. If he was completely one, there'd be no need for Gaur Leela because he'd know exactly what it's like to be Radha. So if you want to say that Nityananda Prabhu is an Anga Manjari in all respects, will you err in that way? That would be like saying that because Radha is the Shakti of Krishna, that she is Krishna. Why does Krishna need to become Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to experience Radha's love for him from her vantage point if he is Radha? You see, that's not very good theology. So yes, a Shakti expansion of Balaram, like an Anga Manjari, there is a oneness with Balaram, but there's a difference too, and the difference is important. So, but yeah, please send me if you can find it again, a link for that. It'd be interesting to see who that's come from and what their argument it is, and we have my explanation of how I would agree with that as I'm explaining. Yes, Nityananda Prabhu, he's giving the Gopi Bhav to the world, and I suppose you could say in that way he's I don't know if you want to say giving it to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the Facebook page seemed to say, but it's related anyway. I'll go that far with you. But so anyway, nice question. And we have only a couple minutes.
There's one more question if you want to take it, or we can leave it for next week.
I will say this, that Anadi Krishna asked about, Saranagati, and I emphasized, well, if there are certain things that are unfavorable for bhakti, we should give them up, even if they're difficult. There are also things that we should accept. So one of them is, in our party bar, is participating in this Sunday call. I hope it's not too difficult for all of you, but it's nice to see who's here. I take notes. Of course, I know that some people listen after the fact because they can't be here at the time of the actual recording, but this is something favorable. I'm looking through, seeing who's here. I see Manan Gopal Nandini, there's Chitahari, Hari Jandas, Gayatri is here, Shraddha Devi, so many, Mr. Govinda, Raj Bhakti also, Ganga Shakti, Bhajan, Nanda Gopal. Nice to see all of you. What's the last question? Maybe I can give a short answer. Oh, so many here. Nice to see you all.
Sajan, do you want to ask you a question?
Did he?
Dandavats Maharaj. Most.
You don't have short questions.
No, not really. So I would not venture to delay you from moving on with your day's activities. But the truth is, that being said, that most of what you shared this morning with the other devotees answered or spoke to what I was going to ask about. So, and the essence of it was that where most people are familiar with the phrase thinking outside the box. But I love what you shared about also at a certain point with maturity and sensitivity, thinking outside the books like that. Yeah. So that was kind of like the essence of it, and more can be shared, next week like that.
Okay. Well, we had time enough for your explanation of your question. So good.
Yes, exactly.
Good. So I hope to be with you all next week. Gaur Premanandi, Haribo, Gaur Bhaktivedanta, Ki Jai. Hari.
Thank you very much. Ki Jai. One quick note announcement. So next Thursday, Mohini Das is going to give a talk on exploration of Ohe Vaishnav Thakur by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So please tune in. It's 11:30 Eastern time on Thursdays on the